Hey guys, Victor here, coming at you again with another deck profile, and for today's video we'll be doing an updated Lightsworn Fiendsmith deck. Now, as far as this deck is concerned, it's still one of the ones that is basically able to incorporate the Fiendsmith engine as smoothly as possible, especially since the banning of Moon of the Closed Heaven, and that's because we already play a light fiend monster in the deck in the form of Weiss. And as a result, even though the Fiendsmith engine has fallen off a little bit compared to how it was previously, it's still an incredibly powerful tool that we can use to our advantage in order to try and make boards that are able to counteract the opponent a lot more easily and smoothly. So, with that out of the way, let's jump right into it. As always, we're going to be starting off with the monster lineup first, and the first card we're going to be talking about is, of course, Weiss Lightsworn Archfiend, as it's pretty much the glue that holds the entire deck together, as it quite literally just opens up every single line of play for the deck. So, it's a level 4 Light Fiend tuner monster, which means that it gets you your entire Fiendsmith combo, it gets you your level 8 Synchro access, it gets you rank 4 Exceed access, it gives you link 2 access. Like, this card just, it literally does everything, and that's on top of having really two solid effects in the form of you can reveal this card and then take another Lightsworn monster in your hand and put it on top of the deck, and then you get to special summon this card for free. And then if it's able to summon itself, you get to mill 2 more cards, including the card you put on top. So it's great for just helping you get rid of bricks like your Wulf and Felis, for example. And then when this card is sent from the deck to the graveyard, it's also able to reborn any other Lightsworn monster not named Weiss. So yeah, this card, it's just, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you want to play a deck like this, you're going to have to max out on this because it really is that important to the deck. Then, to accompany our 3 Weiss, we're going to be playing 3 Lightsworn Dragonling. Now, while Lightsworn Dragonling isn't as important to the deck compared to Weiss, it is still obviously an incredibly powerful card, as when it's special summoned, it's able to foolish any of your Lightsworn cards from your deck to the graveyard, and then from there, you basically have like full reign to do whatever you want, as that will typically lead you to your Synchro Minerva or just any kind of Link 2, Rank 4 play. But if I'm being honest, even though this card is obviously incredibly powerful, we don't even really need to rely on it to get the full combo across. And in a lot of situations, if we don't open it, we're still perfectly fine. However, where this card truly tends to shine is when you're faced with a situation where you're basically constantly being bombarded by hand traps, and after your opponent has exhausted all their resources, you can drop down the Dragonling and still proceed to full combo them, and then by that point, if this card resolves, the game is basically wrapped up. So yeah, 3 Dragonling, phenomenal card. Then that's it for the 3-0s, and then for the 2-0s, we play 2 Felis and the 2 Wulfs, the cards that are able to bring themselves back when they're milled. However, in Felis's case, it's only when it's milled by a monster. So if it's milled by Charge of the Light Brigade, it will not be summoned. So, just something to be aware of. That's it for the 2-0s, and then for the 1-0s, we're just playing 1 Raiden, Hand of the Lightsworn. This deck doesn't really normal summon all that much, so having something like a Raiden that we can normal summon and then just start to immediately mill with is greatly appreciated for like consistency, but you also don't need to rely on this card. And there are like plenty of games where you don't even like summon this. And if anything, it's more important for like the Minerva effect to have like an extra name sometimes, just so you can banish something else, or you can get the most out of the ability to banish 4 cards and be able to set up cards like Punishment Dragon later. And then speaking of Punishment Dragon, that is our dragon of choice. Now, you can't play Judgment Dragon, as, I mean, it's Judgment Dragon, right? But compared to Punishment Dragon, that's just a lot more versatile, as it does give you a form of graveyard control at the cost of 1,000 life points during either player's turn. I think I just go with this pretty much every single time. But if you want to play if you want to play Judgment, by all means, go for it. It's just, I think this one is a lot better into more decks. That's it for the Lightsworn portion, and then for the cards that just help the deck out. Now, I did say this was a Fiendsmith Lightsworn deck, right? So we got to play some Fiendsmith cards, being the 2 Fiendsmith engravers and the 1 Lacrima, the Crimson Tears. I basically just decided to cut Fabled Lurry entirely because I got tired of drawing it. And truth be told, the deck still works perfectly fine. It's just when it comes to cards like Fiendsmith Tract, we're basically going to be prioritizing adding the Weiss to our hand every single time. And it's worked out so far. I don't miss the Larry, outside of maybe having like an extra name for when you want to fusion something with sequence. But for the most part, the deck's still perfectly fine, and you can get away with just playing these 3. Or if you want, I guess you could technically bump up Engraver to 3, but it's very much not needed because we can pretty much access it whenever we want. That's it for that. And then we are going to be playing Bystial monsters just because they mesh really well with the Lightsworn engine themselves. So we have the 1 Bystial magnamhut, the 1 Bystial Duriswurm, and the 3 Bystial baldrakes. So the Bystials themselves are in like a really weird spot, right? As they don't really do anything to two of the top three decks, being Canine and the Draco Tail deck, but they're incredibly powerful against the Yummy deck and also Mitsurugi, which is basically being splashed into everything. So there are going to be some matchups where they just do everything for you, and then there's going to be other matchups where they just don't do anything. But even if you do get paired up into like a matchup with like Draco Tail, for example, it's still perfectly fine because, like I said, these cards just naturally synergize with the Lightsworn portion and just allow you to go for basically level 10 synchros or like rank 6 plays. So yeah, they're still perfectly fine. We don't really need to play Lubalion just because I've built the deck in a way that if we do get hit by Droll and Lockbird, it honestly doesn't really matter because the only cards that we have that search are basically Charge of the Light Brigade. So yeah, which does nothing. But yeah, this is perfectly fine as far as like the Bystials are concerned. That's it for that. And then we just play a bunch of good one-ofs to basically be able to take advantage of when we are capable of milling them. So we'll play the Ringowurm, the Dragon Guardian, the 100 Apples, where if we decide to basically Synchro Summon a level 8 or higher monster, if at any point we get this card in the graveyard, we can banish it to summon a level 2 Dragon token. And I guess technically we could synchro for a level 10, but more often than not, I'm going to be using that token to go for a Link 2 play in the form of Hieratic Dragon, or Seal of the Heavenly Spheres. So, I mean, you do have that. And this also does allow you to play through like a Nibiru if you do get hit by it, right? Because if you control a face-up non-effect monster, being the Nibiru token, you can just summon this and then go for like a Link 2 play anyways and just continue to combo off. But yeah, this card's pretty cool for what it does. We play one Starliege Seyfert. We're basically never using the effect on field. We're pretty much just always going to be using the graveyard effect to banish it to add back a level 8 dragon. And we only have two targets, being the Punishment Dragon, which does come up pretty frequently, or depending on if we milled it, the Chaos Dragon Levianeer, which is just like another powerful resource that we have at our disposal. And all of its effects are really solid, right? So either you get to pop 2 cards if you banish lights and darks, you get a free reborn if you banish all lights, and that effect actually does come up pretty frequently when you're like in a pinch situation and you want to be able to bring back something like a milled Dragonling, for example, or if you're just trying to get more resources on the board and you have to bring back like a Bystial magnamhut, right, or whatever. And then I guess the effect that we basically care about the most, though, is when we banish 3 dark monsters, we're able to loop a card out of our opponent's hand, and our opponent having 1 less card to deal with our entire board pretty much guarantees to win a lot more easily, right? So yeah, this card, phenomenal, but you don't need to play more than 1. Then for the other one-ofs, we're playing 1 Glow Bulb. Admittedly, we don't really need this card. It's basically only going to be used as like link fodder most of the time, but having a card that can come back and then mill us another card to just get 1 card deeper into the deck is pretty cool. We are going to be playing shufflers, so we're playing the 1 Keldo and the 1 Mudora. I opted to go for 2 just because it is very easy to just mill your deck, and you pretty much want to avoid that. But even if the possibility of milling our deck wasn't so high, there are still plenty of decks in the current format that revolve around the graveyard, so having the shufflers just allows us to have that little extra bit of interaction needed to be able to try and win the game more easily. Then for the other one-ofs that we're going to be playing beside the shufflers, we're playing 1 Performage Trick Clam because it's a free body, and then 1 Blackwing Zephyros the Elite, as it's essentially another free body at the cost of 400 life points. And as for what you typically want to bounce this, I'd probably just keep it in the graveyard until you need to bounce, like, or until you have like Punishment Dragon on the field, because then it's basically free, right? You go Special Punishment or JD if you play that, bounce it back with Zephyros, and then you Special Summon it again, and then from there, you have a free level 4 body that you can do something with, and you still have your level 8 body. So with that, that's the monster lineup, and now we can finally move on to the spell and trap portion. Now that we're on the spell and trap portion of the list, we're going to be starting off with the most impactful spell, being Charge of the Light Brigade, which, no brainer, it's going to be played at 3. You mill 3 for cost, and then you get to search your deck for any Lightsworn monster. Really simple, really straightforward stuff. Then the only other 3 that we're going to be playing is actually going to be Forbidden Droplet. So you may have noticed that I'm not playing any hand traps. I figured hand traps don't really mesh well with this deck, and even something like Ash Blossom, right, while it's incredibly helpful in dealing with the Mole Charmies, we only have 3 Ashes and there are 9 Mole Charmies in the game, so we can't basically stop them all, and I basically just elected to play the game that I want to play and not worry about what my opponent is doing. As like dumb as that may sound. Now, while we don't care what they're doing, that doesn't mean that we don't want to be able to break their boards, right? Or just interact with them as much as possible. And Forbidden Droplet basically just gives us the best chance of being able to do that whenever we go second, as well as it provides us with the opportunity to just fill up our graveyard with cards that we don't really want in our hands, like the Zephyroses, like the Trick Clowns, like the Shufflers. So yeah, this card, whether you're going first or second, is really solid. That's it for the 3-ofs. We don't play any 2-ofs. And then for the 1-ofs, we're playing the 1 Fiendsmith track to be able to add any light fiend and then discard a card. We're playing 1 Fiendsmith Sank because it's literally just Hornet drones, but for Fiendsmith, 1 Call by the Grave and 1 Triple Tactics Talent to try and deal with your opponent's hand traps. And then lastly, the 1 Foolish Burial to be able to send any monster from our deck to the graveyard. That's it for the spells. And then for the traps, we're just playing the 1 Fiendsmith in Paradise to be able to take advantage of the Fiendsmith engine fully. And with that, that's the spell and trap lineup, and now we can finally move on to the extra deck. Now that we're on the extra deck, we're going to be starting off with the Link monsters first, and the first card we're going to be talking about is Fiendsmith Requiem, which literally just lets us summon out our engravers or our Lacrimas from the deck, and then it can also just equip itself to be able to summon out like Necroquip, or in the case of Fiendsmith Engraver, give it an additional effect to pop. So yeah, that's all you need for that. Then for the Link 2s, we're playing the 1 Fiendsmith Sequence, which allows us to go into our Fiendsmith Fusion monsters. 1 SP Little Knight to be able to just banish anything, and we do play a couple of cards that allow us to mill our opponent's deck, such as like the Zombie Vampire. So having something like a Little Knight that we can just summon during our turn and then immediately get rid of a key resource that we milled does go a long way, and then it's just like a general nuisance to get rid of too. And then in addition to that, we're playing the 1 Hieratic Seal of the Heavenly Spheres. We play so many different dragon monsters that summoning this card out is honestly pretty easy, so it just seemed like a no-brainer to include. And then for the final Link monster, we're playing 1 Saryuja Skuldra just because we flood the field with so many monsters that we are definitely going to find ourselves in a situation where we just need to clean up the board, and this is basically the best card to do it, right? As you just link 4 off, and you get to draw 4 cards, put 3 bad cards at the bottom of the deck, and then you get the added bonuses from Saryuja's other effects to be able to special summon from your hand or just boost whatever monsters get summoned to the zone it points to. And then more importantly, this is also a dragon monster, and so what you're typically going to do right is you go into the Saryuja, and then after you're done abusing all of its effects, you'll link it off into the Hieratic Seal. So yeah, lots of synergy there. That's it for the links. And then for the fusions, we're just playing the 1 Necroquip Princess to be able to turn cards like Weiss and Lacrima into basically a level 6 fiend. The 1 Fiendsmith's Lacrima, which admittedly we don't really use all that much, but it's a great way of just being able to recycle our resources and then be able to go straight into a rank 6 play immediately after. And then lastly, the 1 Fiendsmith Desiree, which most of the time we're not going to be summoning this. We're actually just going to be keeping it in the extra deck so that we can send it off of our Fiendsmith in Paradise so that we can have an additional interaction during our opponent's turn. And that's it for the fusions. And then for the exceeds, we're going to be playing 1 number 62 Years the Timeless. The boost effect doesn't matter, but what does matter are the other 2 effects where we can either draw 2 cards and then discard 1, which is great for consistency, or depending on what we have in the graveyard, especially if it's like a Dragonling, we can detach 2 and then bring that back and go full combo. So yeah, this card, pretty cool. That's it for the rank 4s, and then the rank 6s, we play 2. We play the 1 Pilgrim Reaper to either mill 5 cards from both players' decks, or we play the DDD Wave High King Caesar if our hand is already good enough, and we basically just need protection from any types of special summon monsters, which, you know, Nibiru, while not as popular, is probably going to get dropped before this card comes down, but if this card comes down, the game is basically wrapped up because that means you're pretty much going to go uninterrupted for the rest of the game. So yeah, pretty strong, pretty ignorant cards. And then for the final exceed, we're playing the 1 Zombie Vampire, just to allow us to mill 4 more cards from each player's deck and then get to special summon 1 monster that was milled. That's it for the exceeds. And then for the synchros, we have Minerva the Athenian Synchro, which, I mean, if this card comes down similarly to Dragonling, the game is basically wrapped up because if all of its effects are able to resolve, we basically milled 1/4 of our deck. So that means that we can pretty much have our entire engine going at that point. And there really isn't much that our opponent can do to stop us. We're also playing 1 generic, level 8 being the Cypher Lord Omega, probably the best generic level 8 monster that we have available to us. And, you know, it's able to do everything, right? You can recycle your banished cards by putting them back into the graveyard during the opponent's standby phase. During either player's main phase, you can banish it to banish this card and a card from your opponent's hand. And with Malice basically disappearing from the format, that effect becomes even more important and a lot more difficult to deal with. And if it's in the graveyard, you can just shuffle back this card and another card in either player's graveyard back into the deck. So yeah, this card is phenomenal. And then for the final card, this is going to be our level 10 Synchro monster of choice. I just have Sword Soul Supreme Sovereign Chengying, but if you can afford Chaos Angel, that's also another valid option. And if you can basically get your hands on like a Bystial Dissipator, that's probably even better than this one as well. It's just, I wanted to basically just leave this one up to you guys for whichever one you decided to play with. but they're all very powerful and able to do pretty much their own thing depending on what you do. This one's a little bit funnier because if you have like a shuffler, right, you can just banish the shuffler, control the graveyard, and then you can trigger your changing to banish a card on the field and the grave. So yeah, pretty cool card. And no matter what choice you make, it's going to be the right one. So go with your gut on that. And with that, that's the Lightsworn Fiendsmith deck. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya!